Now, before the death of the Queen, Princess Anne sat down with Chris Shipp, the ITV royal editor and Sunrise contributor.
The late Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were always seen as the picture of royal romance. Two people completely devoted to each other from the start. But behind the palace walls, things weren't always as they seemed. Over the years, royal watchers couldn't help but notice that the couple didn't actually live together for much of their later life. And now Princess Anne has finally broken her silence about her parents' rather unconventional arrangement. So what exactly did she reveal? And why is she choosing to speak up now? Join us, because we're diving into all the surprising details. Princess Anne breaks her silence. In 2017, something quietly changed behind palace doors. Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth began living separately, a move that sent royal watchers into an overdrive. From whispers of infidelity to talks of tension in paradise, the rumors wouldn't stop swirling. And for years, no one really knew the truth about why the couple made that decision until now. It seems Princess Anne has finally decided to break the silence, dropping a bombshell that might just explain why her parents' choice to live apart was actually the best thing for them. But here's the question everyone's still asking: were the rumors of an affair true? Keep watching, because what follows might just surprise you. The affair rumors didn't just appear out of thin air. They had been circling the monarchy long before Prince Philip's passing, feeding the tabloids and causing endless speculation. After all, the royal family has never been immune to scandalous love stories. But a new 2025 tell-all book unexpectedly threw more fuel into the fire, this time tying Prince Philip himself to one of the most jaw-dropping claims yet. Entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, author Andrew Loney made a stunning revelation while recounting Prince Andrew's wedding to Sarah Ferguson. He wrote that the father of the groom and mother of the bride, lovers 20 years earlier, sat in the third carriage, waving to the crowds. The so-called mother of the bride in question was Susan Barantes, Sarah Ferguson's mother, and according to Loney, the connection wasn't rumor, it was fact. Barantes and Philip were known to be close friends, but eyebrows shot up when details from their past started resurfacing. Back in 1992, as Windsor Castle went up in flames, Philip was nowhere near the Queen. Instead, he was in Argentina attending a party with Susan Barantes. When Loney was later pressed about this explosive claim, he stood firm, insisting his source was credible: his own mother-in-law, who happened to be friends with Barantes herself. But this wasn't the first time Prince Philip's loyalty had been questioned. For decades, the late Duke of Edinburgh's name had been linked to multiple women, though nothing was ever proven. Royal expert Ingrid Seward, who spent years researching the family, revealed that stories of Philip's rumored affairs came up time and time again, though no one ever found concrete proof. Before his death, Philip's name was most famously connected to stage actress Pat Kirkwood, a performer who reportedly caught his attention in 1948 while the then Princess Elizabeth was pregnant with their first child, King Charles. Philip had paid her a visit backstage one evening, and the two went on to spend the night dining and dancing. Their chemistry was undeniable, but Kirkwood always maintained that nothing improper happened. Still, the friendship between them lasted years. They exchanged letters that author Michael Thornton would later inherit and reveal were to be handed over to Philip's official biographer upon his death. But Kirkwood's career took a hard hit because of the gossip. The rumors were relentless, and she made her frustration known in one of her letters, writing that if she had received support from Prince Philip's direction, the matter could have been squashed years ago instead of having to battle a sea of sharks single-handed. Philip's response, as recorded by The Telegraph, reflected his no-nonsense tone. He made it clear that, short of starting libel proceedings, there is absolutely nothing to be done. Invasion of privacy, invention, and false quotations are the bane of our existence. Queen Elizabeth never publicly commented on any of the rumors. But Philip, according to royal author Giles Brandreth in Philip and Elizabeth, Portrait of a Marriage, once dismissed the allegations with sharp wit. He was quoted as saying, "How could I? I've had a detective in my company, night and day, since 1947. Through all the speculation and scandal, one thing remained clear. Their marriage, though unconventional at times, endured through decades of public scrutiny. It was a love built on respect and a deep understanding of each other's worlds." But as the years went by and their roles changed, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's unbreakable bond began to evolve in ways no one quite expected. The real reason Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth started living separately. They were married for an incredible 73 years, a lifetime of loyalty, laughter, and shared duty. Through countless royal engagements, tours, and ceremonies, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip stood side by side. But in the later years of their lives, something changed. Despite their bond, the couple began living separate lives. According to Express UK, the shift began in 2017, when the Duke of Edinburgh officially retired from public service. From that point on, he spent most of his time in the countryside, while the Queen continued her work in the city. And though it raised eyebrows at first, sources close to the royals revealed there was no trouble in paradise. In fact, both of them preferred it that way. The Queen reportedly believed her husband had more than earned his rest after decades of service. She knew Philip too well. If he remained at the center of royal life, he'd feel obligated to keep working. Living at Wood Farm gave him the peace he needed, far enough from palace duties to truly relax, but still close enough to her to never feel too far apart. Wood Farm, a modest home tucked away on the Sandringham estate, became Philip's haven. Away from the cameras, he filled his days with reading, painting, and keeping active, the kind of simple, quiet life he had always enjoyed outside royal duty. And though they weren't always under the same roof, distance didn't mean disconnection. The couple spoke daily, maintaining the companionship that had defined their marriage for more than 7 decades. As royal expert Joe Little of Majesty magazine explained, the Duke often divided his time between Wood Farm and Windsor Castle, spending more time in Norfolk than in Berkshire, because life there was far more relaxed. At times, he was away from the Queen for weeks, but their daily phone calls bridged the distance and kept their bond as strong as ever. And make no mistake, they still made time for each other. In fact, the Queen even skipped her great-grandson Archie Harrison's christening one weekend, honoring plans she had already made to spend time with Philip at Sandringham. For her, family milestones could wait, but time with her husband was sacred. Even as his public appearances became fewer, Philip never truly disappeared from royal life. He continued to show up for major family moments, reminding everyone that he was still the strong, dependable figure behind the Queen's enduring reign. He attended Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding in May 2018, Princess Eugenie's nuptials that October, and even Lady Gabriella Windsor's wedding to Tom Kingston in May 2019. And of course, he was always by the family's side for Christmas services at Sandringham, the place that had become his peaceful retreat. Their arrangement may have seemed unconventional from the outside, but for Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, it was a reflection of understanding, mutual respect, and love that didn't need constant presence to stay alive. After 73 years together, they had found a balance that worked for them, proving that even in the world of crowns and castles, real love can look a little different. And speaking of love, theirs didn't just begin as a royal match. It started long before the throne, long before the crown even entered the picture. To truly understand the bond that carried them through a lifetime, we have to go back to where it all began. How did the couple meet? Queen Elizabeth II spent her entire 70-year reign with one constant by her side, her lifelong love, Prince Philip. Their story wasn't just a royal romance, it was a love that spanned generations, from childhood friendship to a partnership that lasted until Philip's passing on April 9, 2021. Their first encounter dates all the way back to 1934, at the wedding of Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, and Prince George, Duke of Kent. Philip was 13, full of youthful confidence, while Elizabeth was just 8, a shy young princess who, at the time, had no idea she would one day become queen. Back then, she wasn't even the heir to the throne. That changed 2 years later when her uncle, King Edward VIII, famously abdicated to marry Wallis Simpson, setting Elizabeth on a new path that would eventually make her Britain's longest reigning monarch. The two young royals were actually third cousins, both tracing their roots to Queen Victoria. But their real story didn't begin until 1939. Philip, then an 18-year-old Navy cadet, was assigned to escort a 13-year-old Princess Elizabeth during a royal visit to Dartmouth's Royal Navy College. According to author Tina Brown, that day changed everything. That was the moment their connection sparked, the day Elizabeth's heart quietly chose the man who would become her lifelong companion. After that encounter, Elizabeth confided in her father, King George VI, telling him that Philip was the only man I could ever love, as reported by the New York Times. And 8 years later, she proved it. On July 9, 1947, their engagement was officially announced. Philip had proposed at Balmoral Castle, the same Scottish estate where the Queen would one day take her final breath. The ring he gave her carried sentiment. Its diamonds were taken from a tiara that once belonged to his mother, Princess Alice of Battenberg. Not everyone in the royal family was immediately on board. Philip's background raised some eyebrows, as he was born in Greece, into a family that had been exiled when his father, Prince Andrew of Greece, was accused of treason. His childhood was, in royal terms, anything but stable. But soon enough, the Windsors warmed up to him, recognizing the strength and loyalty that would come to define his marriage to Elizabeth. Just 4 months after their engagement, the couple tied the knot in a grand ceremony at Westminster Abbey on November 20, 1947. It was no ordinary wedding. It was a moment of hope for a post-war Britain still recovering from hardship. Elizabeth became the 10th royal to marry in the Abbey, but her wedding was the first ever to be broadcast on television, captivating millions around the world. Despite being royalty, Elizabeth had to abide by wartime rationing rules. Her gown, designed specially for the occasion, was paid for using ration coupons, just like every other British citizen at the time. The satin masterpiece was embroidered with crystals and 10,000 pearls imported from the United States, complete with a 15-foot silk tulle train that shimmered under the lights. Their 9-foot-tall wedding cake and 2,500 gifts from around the world added to the spectacle, including a present from Mahatma Gandhi himself. After exchanging vows, the newlyweds appeared on the Buckingham Palace balcony, waving to thousands of cheering fans who packed the streets to celebrate the beginning of their life together. Their honeymoon was simple by royal standards, a getaway to Hampshire and then Balmoral, accompanied, of course, by Elizabeth's beloved corgi, Susan. Their family grew quickly. In November 1948, just before their first wedding anniversary, Elizabeth gave birth to their first child, Prince Charles. He would later marry Princess Diana, father Prince William and Prince Harry, and eventually ascend the throne as King Charles III after Elizabeth's passing. 2 years later, in 1950, their daughter Anne was born, the only daughter of the royal couple. Known for her no-nonsense personality and dedication to duty, Anne was granted the title of the Princess Royal in 1987. She married Captain Mark Phillips in 1973, but later divorced in 1992 before remarrying that same year. After Elizabeth's coronation in 1953, she and Philip welcomed 2 more sons. Prince Andrew arrived in 1960, the Duke of York, whose later years were marred by controversy and scandal. His ties to Jeffrey Epstein and accusations from Virginia Giuffre, who claimed she was abused at 17, shook the monarchy. Although Andrew denied the allegations, he reached an out-of-court settlement, and Buckingham Palace stripped him of his military titles and royal patronages in 2022. He has since been barred from performing royal duties. Their youngest son, Prince Edward, was born in 1964. He later married Sophie Rhys-Jones in 1999, becoming the Earl of Wessex. Unlike his siblings, Edward has managed to maintain a scandal-free marriage, making him the only one of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's 4 children who has never divorced. Through it all, the triumphs, the scandals, and the changing times, Elizabeth and Philip's bond remained a steady force. From that first meeting in 1934 to Philip's passing in 2021, their love endured the weight of the crown, the demands of duty, and the scrutiny of the entire world. It was a love story, written not in fairy tale perfection, but in loyalty, endurance, and devotion, one that truly stood the test of time. But love alone couldn't shield them from destiny, because for Elizabeth, duty came calling far sooner than anyone expected. The world that had once known her as a young princess would soon know her as something entirely different, a queen. And beside her through it all was the man who had promised her his strength, his loyalty, and his life. Becoming the queen. Elizabeth became queen the very moment her father, King George VI, passed away in February 1952, and from that day on, Prince Philip was right there by her side. Just a year later, in June 1953, he stood proudly beside her as she was crowned in a ceremony watched around the world. At that historic coronation, Philip knelt before her and pledged his loyalty, declaring, "I, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, do become your liege man of life and limb and of earthly worship. So help me God." It was a vow that would define the rest of his life, one of love, duty, and unwavering devotion. Throughout their 73-year marriage, Philip became the Queen's anchor. Royal historian Tina Brown once described how his humor and honesty kept Elizabeth grounded. He was known for keeping her steady, happy, and laughing, and she loved that about him. According to Brown, he never sugarcoated the truth, always told her exactly what she needed to hear, and had a knack for making her laugh no matter the situation. He kept her real, even when the entire world saw her as untouchable. Their love stood firm through decades of change, and by their 50th wedding anniversary on November 20th, 1997, the Queen made a rare and heartfelt public tribute. She described Philip as someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but admitted that he had been her strength and stay all these years. She added that she, their family, and even the nation owed him a debt far greater than he would ever claim, or they could ever truly understand. In 2017, they hit another milestone, their platinum anniversary. 70 years of marriage, making them the first royal couple ever to reach that mark. From the day they exchanged vows in 1947 to that moment, their love story had grown to include 4 children, 8 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren. When Philip passed away in April 2021, at the age of 99, just 7 months shy of their 74th anniversary, the world watched the Queen face life without her beloved partner for the first time. In his final months, he had spent quiet days with her at Windsor Castle as the world battled the COVID-19 pandemic. Together, they shared a rare kind of stillness. No state visits, no crowds, just each other. They even received their COVID-19 vaccinations side by side in January 2021, one of their last public acts together. When Philip was laid to rest, the sight of the Queen sitting alone in the chapel pew, masked, stoic, and heartbreakingly composed, became one of the most powerful images of her reign. It was a moment that showed not just the loss of a monarch's husband, but the loss of a lifelong friend and partner. Tina Brown reflected that in those final months, something beautiful happened between them, with the lockdown keeping them isolated from the world. The Queen and Philip spent more time together than they ever had in their entire lives. It was like their early days all over again, Brown described it as a kind of unexpected blessing, a chance for them to relive their courtship in the most private and precious way before their story came to an end. And so, even after all the years, the pomp, and the crown, their love came full circle. Two people who started as young royals, finding each other again in the calm of Windsor, just as they had so many decades before. But while the world saw a queen mourning her beloved husband, their daughter Princess Anne saw something else, a love story that had shaped her own life. Because if anyone truly understood the bond between Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, it was Anne. She had lived it, learned from it, and carried pieces of both her parents in everything she became. Princess Anne's relationship with her parents. Princess Anne has always been known as the royal family's no-nonsense powerhouse. Tough, witty, and fiercely hard-working. But behind that composure lies a daughter who shared a uniquely close bond with her father, the late Prince Philip. While many remember her for her humor and deep sense of duty, those who knew her best could see how much of her father lived in her, from her spirit down to her stubborn streak. Unlike her older brother, King Charles, who grew up quiet and introspective, Anne inherited her father's adventurous, outdoorsy nature. As Majesty magazine's editor Ingrid Seward once put it, the Princess Royal was single-minded, sporty, and brave, unafraid of controversy, and unconcerned with other people's opinions. In other words, she was Philip's daughter through and through, in a way Charles could never quite be his father's son. Eileen Parker, whose husband was one of Prince Philip's closest friends, once shared that Philip always seemed to have more fun with Anne. Where Charles mirrored the Queen's calm and measured temperament, Anne reflected her father's boldness and energy. They were cut from the same cloth, both independent, witty, and allergic to fuss. Though Philip spent time outdoors with all his children, he and Anne shared something deeper, a mutual love for adventure, dry humor, and the great outdoors. From a young age, Anne was happiest when she was outside, whether it was riding, sailing, or camping beside her father. Their shared interests became the foundation of a lifelong bond that stood out even within the royal household. And while most would assume it was Queen Elizabeth, the lifelong horse lover, who inspired Anne's passion for riding, that credit actually goes to Philip. It was her father who encouraged her to take risks, to challenge herself, and to dive headfirst into the world of equestrian sports. Seward once revealed that Philip had no reservations about letting his daughter face the dangers of competitive riding. One observer even remarked that he treated her almost like a son, pushing her to be bold and fearless. Anne was already leaping over jumps while Charles was still being led around by a rein. She was galloping before she'd properly learned to trot. Philip recognized her raw talent early on and made sure she had the best training possible. A decision that would one day lead her to make royal history as the first member of the royal family to compete in the Olympic Games. Years later, the legacy continued when her daughter, Zara Tindall, followed in her footsteps, winning a silver medal for eventing at the 2012 Olympics. And the person who proudly presented her medal was none other than her mother, Princess Anne. In 1987, just before her 37th birthday, Anne was officially granted the title of Princess Royal by Queen Elizabeth, a title traditionally reserved for the monarch's eldest daughter and the highest honor a royal woman can hold. It was a fitting recognition for a woman whose sense of duty, independence, and strength mirrored both her parents. But for all her toughness, Anne has also shown a side that's loyal and protective of her family, especially her mother. In 2002, during the BBC's Golden Jubilee documentary, The Queen, A Royal Celebration, Anne gave a rare, unguarded interview, offering a glimpse into what life was really like growing up as the Queen's daughter. The documentary, built from decades of unseen home footage, featured moments of the royal family at play and scenes of laughter, warmth, and connection that defied the cold monarchy stereotype. Anne spoke honestly about what it was like living in the royal spotlight. She recalled how awkward her first royal walkabout had been back in 1970, describing the experience as a 19-year-old suddenly being dropped in the middle of the street and being told to go and pick on someone and talk to them. She admitted that fun was not exactly the word she'd use for that moment. But when asked about claims that the Queen was an uncaring mother, Anne didn't hesitate to set the record straight. She dismissed the idea entirely, saying none of the royal children ever doubted their mother's love for even a second. She called it extraordinary that anyone could think otherwise, firmly stating that her mother cared for them just as any other parent would. That's Princess Anne in a nutshell. Fiercely loyal, unapologetically honest, and deeply connected to both her parents in her own way. From her father, she inherited a no-nonsense attitude and humor. From her mother, a sense of duty and devotion. Together, those traits made her not just the Princess Royal, but one of the most respected and quietly formidable figures in the entire royal family. What do you think about Princess Anne's relationship with her parents? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.